So let's get started. Welcome, Diane and Irina. Diane Henley is a retired veterinary assistant and registered nurse. She is one of the founding members of Sunshine Coast Bear Alliance, along with Irina. And it's Diane's hope that by replacing fear with knowledge, a safe and respectful coexistence between humans and resident bears can be created within our coast community. And then we have Irina Fox, became a dedicated animal activist in 2012 after watching a documentary exposing animal cruelty at factory farms. Irina has volunteered for many organizations, including Mercy for Animals, Fur Bearers Defenders, and Vancouver Humane Society. After moving to the Sunshine Coast, she co-founded the Sunshine Coast Bear Alliance with Diane Henley in 2019 and currently runs her own home business and volunteers at the Alliance. So welcome, and I will pass the screen on to you.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction. And thank you so much for your kind donation to our Bear Alliance. That's really just so nice of you. We greatly appreciate that. So I'm going to take myself off the video and show you some slides now. I'll just say that I have a bit of an overview about our bears and some behaviors and tips for encounters. And then I'll turn things over to Irina, and she's going to speak to you about challenges our bears face on the coast and how we can be better bear aware around our home and yard so that we can work towards a better coexistence. So I'll just get started here. Thank you. So as Carol mentioned, replacing fear with knowledge is our motto. And as you can imagine, there's still some misconceptions about our bears. So we hope through education that we can change that for our community and we can reach a better coexistence. So we began in 2019 and our mission is to reduce negative, just gonna minimize this here. Reduce negative human-bear encounters on our Sunshine Coast by fostering a pragmatic understanding and appreciation of our bears so that bears, residents, and visitors, because we get a lot of those, can coexist safely. So sometimes we're asked, why bears? So bears have been in our psyche since we were young through stories and fables and Indigenous culture where bears are considered a symbol of wisdom, humility, and strength. And as I'm sure you're aware, bears are a keystone species. They play an important role in our forests. As you can see, this bear is dragging his salmon along, and the carrion will be deposited in the forest. Through digging, they aerate the soil. And as we know, they disperse seeds through their scat. It's unfortunate that historically our bears have been portrayed as aggressive animals with malintent, and that is far from their innately timid and tolerant nature. So again, through education, we can hopefully change that perception. So just a bit of probably a review, but hopefully a good one. Our coast is home to the North American black bear, which is the smallest of the 8 bear species, but having the largest brain of like-size land mammals. And in fact, bears' intelligence is actually recently been compared to that of the great apes. They're highly intelligent animals. They have great memories. They have almost a GPS system that researchers are not quite sure even how that works. So they have a lot of amazing qualities. So on the coast here, we have the black bear, but we usually tend to see our bears in black or a variety of brown colors, but sometimes a cinnamon. And somebody from Sandy Hook just mentioned that they have a large cinnamon colored bear up in their area. So that's pretty neat to see. So this is a cinnamon color, and they can come also in blonde and a blue gray and even white with the rare Kermode or spirit bears as we have. And just a few little traits. Contrary to popular belief, our bears have very good eyesight. They see in color and they detect movement well. And as we know, they see well at nighttime. They have pretty decent hearing, maybe not so good around like loud water sources. So always a good idea to be alert if you're by a river or waterfall and make a bit of extra noise. But their most highly developed sense, as we probably know from recent encounters here is their sense of smell. They can smell odors up to almost a mile away from the source. So that is incredibly impressive. They're great at running, even though they're large animals, they're quite swift. And they're also good swimmers. These are a couple of bears up in Powell River having a dip in the cool water during the hot summer. And one of their distinguishing features, as you know, are their curved claws, which enable them to comfortably climb up trees. They can spend a lot of time up in the trees in the forest. And particularly mums with cubs will treat their cubs if they perceive a threat. And cubs can pretty well climb a tree as soon as they come out of the den. So that's a good safety feature. Our male bears can actually reach a weight of up to 500 pounds and the females in the 200-pound range. And our black bears can live up 30 years in the wild. So it's our hope, again, that our bears that sometimes we refer to as our urban or resident bears that spend time with us in our community in that urban wildland interface, hopefully, if we can coexist, they can also live a long life in our community. So probably just a little bit of a refresher here. Our bears are classified as carnivores, but they are sometimes called opportunistic omnivores. They eat 85% plant matter, consisting in springtime of dandelions, sedges, and skunk cabbage, which is thought to stimulate their digestion. And they also do obtain protein from the likes of salmon where it's available, and ants and termites, other insects, moth larvae, bees, bee larvae, and the honey, of course. And in the summertime, the berry crops start to come out. They can ingest an amazing amount of berries in one day. Their long tongues are quite good at just grasping off the berries really quickly from the stalks. And then in the fall, the bears go through what is called hyperphagia. So it's a period of incredible amount of calorie intake, and they look for nuts and acorns and pine cones, and those have obviously very high fat content, so a lot of calories as they're trying to put on their fat stores. So our bears don't truly hibernate. They go into what is called torpor, which is a state of decreased metabolism. So heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature all decrease. They don't eat or drink when they're in the den. They don't urinate or defecate. And they have a few interesting systems that keep them sort of motoring along when they're in the den. They actually recycle the urea in their urine to be used as a protein source. So that, along with their fat stores, feeds them. And even despite their relative immobility, they're not completely immobile when they're in the den. They do move around a little bit and reposition, especially mums with cubs. But they don't suffer bone density loss, and they also don't suffer from blood clots. They lack a protein that's required to aggregate the platelets, so they aren't troubled by those issues. So mums and cubs, they stay in the den, and they're just coming out now in April, so we will see a little bit more activity. So they enter the dens in about November or December here. And as I said, everything slows down. And they do reposition a bit. And then also, I did want to mention, sometimes the occasional bear will get up for a little walkabout. And this is usually a bear that maybe hasn't put on enough fat stores during the fall. So they might try and see if they can get a little bit more food. And then despite this slippy state, mums with cubs can actually respond to any perceived threats. And as we know, dens can be in tree stumps, rocky outcrops, or occasionally a crawl space. So we do tell people to make sure that they really have a secure door on their crawl space. Our bears mate in June, but to optimize the health of the mom, they practice what is called delayed implantation. So the fertilized eggs are only implanted in November after mom has a lot of fat stores. So the cubs are born in the den in January, and they're just incredibly small. It's amazing, given the size of mom and the size they achieve. These little ones are only about the size of a chipmunk when they're born, and they are blind and covered with a coat of fine black fur. They weigh less than a pound. So a typical litter is about 1 or 2 cubs, but again, depending on the health of mom, she can have even up to 3 or 4. And we just got a lovely picture yesterday. I'll show you that in a moment, of a couple of new cubs that just emerged from a den in Seashelt. So the mums, as I said, are coming out. We've had a couple, and then over the next couple of weeks, they will continue to emerge from the den. While in the den, the cubs suckle from mom, and she has very rich milk fat of about 25% fat in her milk, so very nutritious for the cubs. And they keep suckling from mom until the summer, until they get their chewing teeth. So these are the 2 little cubs from Seashelt. This lady just happened to catch a shot of them as she looked out her kitchen window. So they are just tiny fellows. So they continue to suckle and start to eat a little bit of what mom is eating, and then continue growing. And these cubs are a little bit older. I'm sorry, you can't quite see from the bottom of the screen, but this was taken at Egmont Port Mellon, other end of the coast, Port Mellon. And these cubs are a little bit older, and mom has just stood up to get a better look at what's going on. The photographer was actually taking pictures of some elk, and she popped up. And sometimes we get calls about lone cubs, and people have actually seen what is a yearling and not a cub. So we always tell people to make sure, if they think they see a cub, let us know, and not ever to approach a cub. Moms often leave their cubs in a secure area when they go off to forage, or they send them up a tree. So occasionally people will make the mistake and think that the cub is a yearling. But as you can see on the right-hand side, the yearling is much lankier. And we often refer to these yearlings as teenagers, although not all teenagers, but they can be a little bit busy. These are the ones that sometimes get in a bit of trouble, as yearlings stay with mom till they're 17 months old, and then mating season has begun again. So mom shoos them away as the mature males are coming down from the forest to mate. It's a bit of a safety thing, and it's also time for them to start off on their own. The female yearlings, sometimes mom tolerates them staying around a little bit longer with her than the males, but eventually they all do move off. So there still, unfortunately, exists some myths and misconceptions about our bears. And Dr. Lynn Rogers is one of the foremost bear researchers in North America. He's worked and lived with bears for 30 plus years. And he says the problem for bears is not so much what we don't know, it's what we think we know that isn't true. So just a few of the common myths. People sometimes think bears are unpredictable, but if we take the time to know a bit about their behavior and their communications, their behavior can actually be somewhat predictable. But we always do like to remind people they are wild animals and they need our respect and their space, and we can't always anticipate everything they're going to do. A bear standing on his hind legs is going to charge. This is also a myth. Bears stand up to get a better sense of their smell and look around and see what's going on. And some people think that it's the worst thing you can do is to get between a mom and her cubs. Now, mom will definitely be defensive, but she will usually tree her cubs for safety, and then she will often stay at the bottom of the tree and walk around the bottom of the tree. She may make some moaning sounds, which shows that she is upset and anxious. So obviously it's time to leave the area. So we do say when you're out and about and enjoying the coast, be aware of your surroundings. Don't have your headphones on. And just, for fun, keep a lookout for bear signs. We call these the social media of bears. these rub trees. Bears scratch and rub their necks and heads and backs against the tree to leave their scent so they can tell other bears that they're around. And they also sometimes pee at the bottom, urinate at the bottom of the tree and stamp the urine into the ground, again, just as a signal that they're coming through. And all bears do this, from the young ones up to the mature bears. All of them do this as a communication. And we all know about bear scat, just different colors depending on what the bears have been eating in the season. And we do say, keep your canine companions on a leash. I know it's nice for dogs to run about, but if you're off on the trails or, somewhere in the back country, what happens 70% of the time is a dog will see a bear and chase it and then turn around and then bring the bear back to you. And then you have a very upset bear, and yourself and the dog are that's a safety risk. Bear experts do say to carry bear spray for your sake and the bears. If you do happen to have an unwanted close encounter, the bear spray can give you and the bear a chance to each have a safe departure. And always carry on your person, not in your backpack, in a holster or on a lanyard. And you can get bear spray at Alpha Adventures, Trail-Based Sports, and at the Home Hardwares on the coast. So if you do encounter a bear and the bear hasn't seen you, the best thing to do is just back away and leave the area. If you do have to go through that area, then you can make lots of noise and clap and shout, and usually the bear will leave at that point. If the bear has seen you, the bear may stand up to have a better look. So just remain calm, talk to the bear in a calm voice. Hey bear, I'm leaving. Put your arms out low to your sides and just start to back away. And then usually the bear has gone as well. Now, if for some reason you're not heeding that information and you are getting too close, there are a few different things that you may see. The bears may clack their teeth or purse their lips and make a huffing sound. And that can escalate into slapping or pawing objects on the ground. Just have a little video here. Hopefully you can hear this, of this little bear who's a bit anxious, I think, from the closeness of the photographer. Oh, nope, sorry, it's not playing. I apologize very much for that. So there is a funny huffing sound that they make. And then if you still haven't left the area, you may actually be on the reciprocal end of a bluff charge. And this is not a true charge, but the bear is still asking you to give him or her space. It's asking you to leave. So definitely you need to be leaving the area. So those are just a little bit of background for you and some tips about what to do out in the trails. And now I'd like to take things and turn it over to Irina, and she's going to talk about challenges for our bears and how you can be bear aware around your home. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Diane, and thank you, Carol, for your earlier introduction. Well, so we'll start with in no particular order, challenges that our bears face. One of the challenges is a habitat loss and glyphosate spraying. As many of you know, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup. So it's used to kill off broadleaf plant species that might inhibit the growth of seedlings that are replanted after a forest is logged. So applications result in a lack of foraging foliage, reduced plant diversity, lack of shade trees, and an increased threat to beetle infestation and wildfire spread. Sunshine Coast is a home to some of the oldest trees in the province. So the logging of this old growth and secondary medium growth forests reduces overall habitat for our bears, and particularly the availability of denning sites in the forest. So at present, there are no regulations in BC governing forest practices near bear denning sites, except for Great Bear Rainforest in Haida Gwaii. So moving on to the next challenge, and that's the urban development. Increased urban development contributes to the loss of suitable habitat for our bears, as well as bringing with it the potential for negative human-bear encounters that result from a variety of human activities, such as inadequate garbage, attractant management, increased vehicle traffic, contributing to collisions with bears and other wildlife crossing roadways. And we have an increased numbers of people recreating in bear habitat areas. So that's another important fact. The next challenge we have is the increased summer population of our coast. So influx of tourists to the coast during warmer months causes another set of challenges for our bears, and as many visitors simply either unaware of behaviors and responsibilities when recreating in the wildlife territory or may not care enough. So we do have quite a few Airbnb owners as well that were found to be at fault, often when they fail to provide adequate garbage collection and management at their rental accommodations. That cause serious risk to our bears by enticing them to discover those attractants. The next one is one of the hottest issues on the coast and anywhere in the province, and that's food attractants. So food attractants issues are the primary reason for negative encounters. So black bears become more active this time of the year, and they will look for easy to access food sources. They have sense of smell that is 100 times stronger than a dog's, and they have excellent memory and intellect, which allows them to remember where new food sources were found. And so they will come back to the area for more reward. So unfortunately, wildlife that comes too close to people too often are at a greater risk of injury and may be killed by our government agencies, and specifically our Conservation Office service. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about the various attractants. So bears are very adept at digging, and they will enter gardens looking for roots and tubers as well as vegetation. So they favor fruit trees and vegetables in particular. So when making plans to deter bears, remember that these animals spend a lot of time and energy trying to gain access to those food sources. So avoid planting berry bushes, fruit and nut trees from high foot traffic areas, such as entrance, doorways, or walkways, or where you're setting up children's play set. Those kind of places would be a wise decision. So you can replace them with ornamental or non-fruit bearing varieties, as bears prefer areas of cover where they are less exposed and can retreat to. So to reduce fruit production to a more manageable amount, please consider spraying off some of the blossoms in the springtime. And fruit should always be harvested as it ripens, if not before ripening. You can always ripen fruit indoors. A windfall must be removed immediately from below the tree, as rotting fruit becomes highly odorous, attracting bears and other wildlife species, including wasps, which can make gathering the fruit a very difficult task. So, but if you are unable to pick your fruit, please ask your friend or a neighbor to help you, or you can always call a local organization and ask about their picking program. There is some information on Facebook, on social media, that offers fruit exchange programs. So that's also something you might want to consider. Electric fencing can be effectively used to deter bears from orchards and gardens. Chickens, we do have quite a few people who have chicken coops. So it's important that they're kept in a solid coop so that the birds can be locked in at night. The coop and run must have electric fencing around them to protect the birds from bears. Remove any large climbable trees or branches adjacent to the chicken coop or run, or you can place the coop and run away from the trees. Always store chicken feed securely indoors and in a separate location from the birds. It's often the mishandling of a grain and mash and other kind of livestock feed that initially attracts bears. Ideally, you should avoid using, speaking of bird feeders, ideally you should be avoiding any type of bird feeder during bear season, because not only birds have access to plenty of natural foods during this time, bird feeders often spread salmonella and other diseases, and they are readily attract hungry bears because the bird seed is very high calorie food source. So it's very, very delicious treat. Store bird seed securely indoors at all times, very important. If you do have hummingbird feeders, as an alternative, you can always plant red or pink native flowers, which are known to attract hummingbirds. Bird baths are a great alternative that will attract birds to your yard without luring bears into trouble. So either sand baths or this kind of bird baths, they're just absolutely amazing, especially during our hot summers that we've been having. Let's talk about composters here. So use, if possible, please use bear-proof composters. Keep it clean and odor-free. You can always use equal amounts of brown and green matter, and keep compost aerated and properly turned. So you should never compost meat, fish, oil, or grease, or dairy products. You might want to sprinkle it with lime to aid in decomposition and reduce odor. Bury kitchen waste and cover with dry leaves or dried grass clippings. You can always locate compost well away from the forest edge or natural pathways that bears use. The other suggestion would be, you might want to start a community compost at an electric fence landfill, or try indoor vermicomposting, which is actually a very popular way of composting indoors without, any bad odors leaking. We do have a few people on the coast that successfully, they have been doing that successfully for a long time. Okay, to shoe or not to shoe? Well, so this is just a question that we occasionally get from people who have visitors or furry visitors there. And what happens, they find them sitting up in a tree in their yard, and they just simply not sure whether they should, scare the bear away or they should leave them. So the experts recommend, if a bear is up in a tree and they're in the middle of foraging, they're eating apples or whatever it is that they're doing, please let them be, leave them alone, and just go inside and wait until they're done. And very often they will just calm down on their own and they will just go back into the forest. Sometimes if a bear is sitting up high in a tree for a long period of time, that simply could be because it's either in distress, possibly scared of either nearby a more dominant male bear, or if there is a threat like running dogs, for example, that's possible too. So always consider that, and then just let the bear, calm down on their own. Vehicles, yeah. So we had quite a few incidents where bears can easily open the door. They get inside and they can wreak a havoc in your vehicle, and that could be simply because you left a candy wrapper or even an air freshener. They have such a strong sense of smell, and there's not much that won't stop them if they want to get to it. So definitely don't leave anything odorous inside. Lock the windows and doors at all times, and that would be safer for you. Yeah. All right. And this is just a chart that just kind of covers all the attractants, that bears, definitely enticed. So that's unsecured garbage, unsecured recycling, bird feeders, fruit trees and berry bushes, citronella candles, vegetable gardens, bee houses, compost, backyard chickens, vehicles, barbecue, including grease traps. So definitely something you want to pay attention, especially during the barbecue season, is that barbecues need to be cleaned on a regular basis. And the grease, those kind of things need to be cleaned as well. So huge attractant for sure. Managing residential attractants. So ideally you would use a bear-proof garbage bin. Preferably if you don't have enclosed storage shed of some sort, if you have to store your garbage in a carport in the open, ideally you tie it very tightly to either on a chain or something, and basically take measures that will deter bears at all. One of the things you can do if you do have to store it out in a carport, you can soak rags in a pine sol, because bears, they really detest the smell of pine sol or ammonia type of smells. And if you just place it either inside or on the outside around the cans, so that can definitely help to deter them. Again, those smells are very unattractive. But always make sure you try keeping your if you recycle in the first place, and if you remove and rinse all the recyclables and you put them away, your garbage really should not contain a lot of odorous stuff to begin with. So that's kind of a first rule of thumb, is just, you know, make sure that everything odorous, compost and recycling is not in the garbage. And then that should definitely help with to reduce odors. On a day of a collection, put the garbage can on the curb, not earlier, especially in our on our coast here. We live among other wildlife, not only bears, so that's important. Rinse recycling on a regular basis. And I think I've covered the chickens and other livestock with electric fencing. Yeah, I think we've covered most of that now. All right, so these are the pictures that we received in the past from our residents who sent us their concerns and complaints. So the first picture up top there is a woman who built a shed where she stores her garbage, and the bear got into it. So the lesson here is this: number one, it's very easy for a bear to open up a wooden shed. So that's really not that's really nothing. But the problem why the bear was attracted to the shed in the first place, because if you look closely at the garbage, there's a lot of odorous recycling that was simply thrown in the garbage. So wrappers, all kinds of things that have still food remains on them. So that's definitely will produce a lot of odor and will attract a bear. And then it's really doesn't take a lot of effort for a bear to simply open and get into the shed. So again, separating all the odorous stuff, separating recyclables, and keeping the actual garbage can in a more secure place, and ideally bear-proof containers. The middle picture is just simply showing what happens when we, you know, placing our garbage up out there on the street. And there's really it's not a bear-proof containers. It's so easy to get into that. And so we have a little tiny bear that is already learning that this is how easy to get a reward. This is where they can get to, to get to garbage. So really bad for everyone. And the top right photo there with the bear trying to get to bird feeder. Sorry. This was one of the conflicting situation between two neighbors. One neighbor just had, hung a giant bird feeder there with so much seed, and the same bear kept coming, jumping up on the fence and coming to get to the bird seed. The neighbor, one of the neighbors have children, and obviously that was a concern. So we had to escalate the situation there to our conservation officer, who came and had a chat with the neighbor that hangs that giant bird feeder. It's just really was not necessary. And below two pictures are just showing another example of what happens when you throw all your food scraps, instead of composting, you're throwing it in the garbage. And this is what bears will do. But what's interesting in this particular case, this gentleman has the right enclosure. It's a very sturdy orange metal enclosure that is ideal and perfect to store garbage, but he simply wasn't using it in the way it was intended. The lid was half open, and the garbage is just sitting there, leaking all the odors, and it was very easy to open and get there. So definitely a good example of what not to do. So with the goal of limiting conflicts between bears and humans in our community, on July 5th of 2021, the town of Gibson's adopted a new wildlife bylaw. So we have provided our recommendations, and we worked closely with the mayor and the council. And so that was definitely huge win for us and for the residents. And then later on December 15 of 2021, we have made more progress with the District of Sechelt. They updated their solid waste control and collection bylaw. They added important wildlife attractants clauses. So you can always follow that link, where you can go to our website and you can read more about bylaws in each municipality. And these are just a couple of pictures of our orphan cubs that we took part in rescuing, Sunny and Sakino, and there's a link there where you can go and read their stories. In both cases, they were very malnourished. They were on their own for a very long period of time. We had a lot of residents searching for them. It was such a great effort from so many people, but we got them captured, and they were sent to Critter Care. That's a rehabilitation center in Langley that helps to rehab bears, and then they were released back into the wild. And we're hoping that they're living their happy life right now. And if you'd like to become an advocate and help us to spread the word and educate your neighbors, we have a very comprehensive line of merchandise, as well as signage, brochures, window stickers, bumper stickers. There's stickers you can put on your garbage can. Signage basically starts from food attractants to short-term rental signage. So if you own B&B and you want to educate your guests It's one of the signs you can install at your rental, and more. So you can go to this website, sunshinecoastbearalliance.com/merchandise. You can browse and you can place an order. Well, thank you very much. That concludes our presentation. And if you have any questions, Diane and I will be happy to answer.
Thanks, Diane and Irina. Maybe if you can unshare your screen, and then we can see you bigger.
Oh,
there we go. Now we can all see you. Okay, so are there any questions? You can either hold up your hand or use the reaction button or chat on the side here, and I can ask for you. Oh, here we go. Okay, Ray's got a question. Go ahead, Ray.
Great presentation, Diane and Irina. Very interesting and informative. And we live on about 6.5 acres in Garden Bay, and we have neighbors that live on 5-acre properties, and the local bears seem to be at their places quite frequently, but they rarely ever seem to come to our place. I don't know if it's because we don't have any attractants, or do they have particular paths and routes that they follow when they travel around the forest?
Yes, thank you for your question, Ray. You're completely correct. They have their trails that they will follow every year, and then the mums teach their cubs to go down that way. But as you mentioned, definitely if there are attractants there, that will bring them back right away. So we're always happy to come and do educational canvassing in the area if you think that's an issue. Pender is in the SCRD, and unfortunately there are no wildlife attractant bylaws able to be enforced just yet. The SCRD hasn't quite come on board, and we are aware too, you have a different garbage situation, that you take your garbage to the depot yourselves. So there's a few little differences there, but yeah, they certainly go back to their favorite spots. Thank you.
I have, oh, Annalise has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Great presentation, by the way, and nice to know, that you guys are doing this kind of work. Just wondering about the sanctuary. Is it in North Vancouver on Grouse Mountain? There's a bear sanctuary. I'm well aware of Critter Care. I'm a former Vancouver Humane Society director, so certainly have worked with Critter Care, but I was just wondering about the bear sanctuary and what you think of it, and what's going on over there, if you could tell us about that.
Do you want to go, Irina, or?
I'm just not aware of the sanctuary in North Vancouver. Wouldn't that be embarrassing if there was something and I wasn't aware of it?
Well, I'm not completely familiar with what has happened recently, but I know that they have their two bears there for sure. Is it Grinder, and I've just forgotten the other one's name, that they've had for quite some time there. I don't know a lot of the details. Probably not answering your question very well, is it?
Well, I was just wondering if it I know that there were 2 bears. I haven't been following it either, but I was just wondering, all the bear cubs that you're involved with that need rescuing go to Critter Care then, and then back to the wild.
That's correct. Yes, they stay at
Yeah.
Critter Care until they're robust enough to be released back into their home territory. Like one of the cubs that Irina showed Saginaw, who only weighed 10 pounds when he was taken to critter care, was released back up here. And we had a little video that critter care sent to us of him being re-released. But as far as I know, the 2 bears at Grouse Mountain, they're still there. I haven't heard otherwise.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, thank you. Great job, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just before I get to you, Sue, there was a question in the chat. Is dog poop an attractant? I have a small bin outside that I use until I dispose of it when I take my garbage in. And then it says spray bin with pine sol ?
I would spray that bin with pine sol. Bears are known to eat poopy diapers. So I would think that there's not a big leap, you know, but I can't say that for sure, but just to be sure, I think it would be a good idea to spray with pine sol. I'm going to look that up.
Is it because the pine salt smells like the forest and it'll take away the smell of like humans?
I
Is that
think
why
they
we
just
use
don't
pine
like
sol?
pine. They don't like pine smell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. So pine sol is a very concentrated, has a very high concentration of that. So that's very, yeah, they're repelled by that. That's what we understand from experts.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Sue.
Thanks, Diane and Irina. It's very good and informative. I just wondered if they tagged the cubs, so any bears that are cubs that are recovered, so they know, if they're ever caught again.
Yes, they do. Yes, you're correct. They do tag them before they release them back.
So is it like a microchip?
No, it's an ear tag.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They're often yellow. I don't think there's any distinct color differences, but they're often yellow. It seems, yeah.
And then they try and put them back where they were found.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're pretty lucky to have critter care so close. The only other bear rehab facility is Northern Lights. Most of you have probably seen the show on Knowledge Network about the bear rescue, and it's where they look after mainly the grizzly bears. They do look after black bears as well, but they do amazing work there. So, but we're lucky that critter care is near us.
So they released Saginaw back in the area because that was right around my house here.
Yeah, they really,
Okay.
yeah.
So if we see a bear with the
with the
yellow
little-
tag, it might
yeah,
be Saginaw.
yeah, tag number 100, but you don't want to get that close.
No, use the binoculars.
Yeah.
I had a question actually, because it came up on Facebook about, and it actually happened to me here, where a bear kind of clawed in the hot tub. So it pushed the lid off, scratched it a little bit, and then was trying. My original thought was that there was a wasp nest that was stuck between, we had been gone for a little bit, and a wasp nest had formed in the grate in between the walls. And so it was clawing at that. And so I thought maybe it could, I don't know if it would hear or smell the nest and want to eat the grubs, but then it also just happened recently to somebody down the road here. And there was all sorts of speculation on what it could be. And I thought I'd ask to see if you had any particular insight.
Did you want to take this, Irina, or to?
Well, I can just tell you what I understand is that bears actually can be attracted to chemicals. So sometimes if they try getting into sheds, and some people would say, well, there was nothing there, there was no food. And yet they're attracted to certain paints, chemicals. So with the hot tub, my only understanding and explanation is that maybe a smell of chlorine and warm bubbling water kind of attracted. Other than that, I am I don't know what else would attract unless there was something near there as as an attractant.
They are, Carol, actually, unfortunately, attracted to petroleum products.
Mhm.
So the actual hot tub cover and the insulation. And what happens is sometimes there's some off gassing, and they're attracted to the smell.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there was an incident where a bear got into motor oil just up behind the Tim Hortons. So that is what I've heard about the hot tubs. Just very unfortunate. I think you can get metal covers, but they're probably, I don't know if they're fairly expensive, and you probably don't want to have a bunch of Lysol smelling, odor around your hot tub, because that's not pleasant for you. So, but it's certainly not their first choice,
Yeah.
I don't think it's very common, but
No.
it did happen here, and I wondered, so do they normally kind of would go after a wasp nest like underground or something to try to eat grubs and that?
Well, it certainly can happen, there's
Yeah.
more apt to go for bees and honey and, that kind of,
Right.
but definitely, they eat a lot of different types of insects. And
So it must have been the smell maybe then. Any other questions? Okay. Well, great presentation. That was really informative and just good timing. And it reminds us to be more mindful of what we have in our yard, because sometimes it is easy to forget about bringing stuff inside. Like I have an outdoor shower and I just was thinking my soap smells like lemon. So I should probably be bringing that in every night.
yeah,
And yeah, so there's just little things like that. And you reminded us to
We
be more
do
mindful.
want to just remind everyone to check out our website. We have so much information there. We have information on our social media activities. We have information on our public events, because we do occasionally go to public markets with our merchandise, with our educational materials, and joining us on our group. We have close to 900 members in our group.
Wow.
And there is a lot of conversations there. So if wondering about something, if this is, has been bugging you about the bear, just you can ask that in the group, because we do have quite a few bear experts. We have a great members that are so educated, and they can definitely help, to answer your questions. And yeah, so check that out.
Will you be anywhere for Earth Day this weekend? with your merchandise?
unfortunately not this year, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we do have your signs posted on, well, I've seen your signs on the roadway that watch out for the bears and bear country. So thank you for putting those signs up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.